Is it not true that you feel like your house is your property? And if it's your property, don't you have rights to your family and your person?
According to the Third Amendment, I do.
If we are not granted the right to protect and defend our persons and property against intruders, wouldn't it stand to reason that it is actually the intruder that has the right to your property and family? If the violent person is not to be defended against whether it be on the street or in your own house or your own property, then we are in essence giving the violent among us the right to our property. Why should we be permitted to have locks on our doors if the violent actually has the right to our person and property in the first place? By giving the most violent and the most aggressive among us the ability to take what is ours without a fight or the threat of retribution by the owner, we are actually promoting violence. What do we really want to promote in our society? Peace or violence? Do we actually want to give the most violent the ability to do as they wish? If we are not permitted to defend ourselves, then we are actually promoting violence. On the other hand, if we would like to have a peaceful society, wouldn't it be more effectively accomplished by allowing the most peaceful to actually defend what is theirs against the more aggressive? If the peaceful person is allowed to defend what is theirs with force, it will effectively discourage the violent from aggression. Wouldn't you agree that arms are in better hands with a peaceful, law-abiding citizen? Doesn't it stand to reason that if the peaceful are permitted to defend their person and property with force, the violent will be less likely to be violent, to be aggressive? By giving the peaceful more force, it seems that as if we would actually be promoting a peaceful society instead of a more violent one. Wouldn't you agree? Some might say that this is what the law is for. I ask you, couldn't we actually reduce the need for law enforcement by increasing the rights of peaceful, law-abiding citizens to bear arms? If it were known, or at least assumed, that every person were carrying a weapon on their person, and that they were legally permitted to use it, wouldn't that tend to deter acts of aggression to anyone? Again, I ask you, we are attempting to have a more peaceful society or a less peaceful one. If a more peaceful society is brought about by allowing more arms rights to law-abiding citizens, then I would say that this is what we need to do. Gun laws affect only law-abiding citizens, right? The criminals are not going to abide.
The right of the citizen to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned. This is in our own Constitution of the state of Pennsylvania. Now, we have heard that it is necessary to protect yourself, your family, and your property. Even in different situations outside of the own personal home, say in the schoolroom, in the classroom, it is necessary to be able to protect yourself. Maybe not as every single individual student, but the teachers at least, to have some kind of weapon. Guns are violent things. They do create destruction, and yet that is only when they are used in a bad way. See, oftentimes we rely on security personnel to keep us safe. But if we are attacked, not everyone has their own personal bodyguard. So oftentimes, before any kind of security personnel could come, the person would have already been hurt from a survey conducted by professors shows that fear of the armed citizen and the threat of tough punishment for using a gun or other weapons in committing a violent crime are significant factors in both reducing and deterring crime. This would result in less shooting.
Guns, as she said, are violent things. If everybody were to carry a gun, who's to say that they would not be persuaded to use it if the need arose? But at the same time, the more people who have access to guns, and the more people who have guns at their sides or on their person, can indeed cause more violence if they use them. But we cannot, as Zach said, we cannot fight the Second Amendment because it is just that, an amendment. But we can fight gun control. Guns are available to the public. The more criminals and people with ill intent will get their hands on them and will eruptions. Now, simple surveys have said that cities with gun clauses have much lower crime rates than cities without gun clauses.
Well, we've heard the pros and cons of bearing arms today, yet there are still these facts. Keeping the gun in the home carries a murder risk 2.7 times greater than not keeping, according to a study by Arthur Kellerman. The National Rifle Association has fiercely attacked this study, but it remains valid despite the criticism. The study found that people are 21 times more likely to be killed by someone they know than a stranger breaking into the house. Half of the murders were over arguments or romantic triangles. This study also found that the increased murder rate in gun-owning households was entirely due to an increase in gun homicides only, not any other murder method. It further found that gun-owning households saw an increased murder risk by family or intimate acquaintances, not by strangers. The bottom line is, one of God's commandments is, "Thou shalt not kill." And there are facts these are facts that we cannot very well ignore. The most straightforward explanation is that the presence of a gun increases the possibility that a normal family fight or a drinking binge will be deadly. No other explanation fits of the above facts, and we shouldn't take the risk of having human life smothered out continually. While there may be the right, there is still the risk.
In our state constitution it says, "The right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned." Article 1, Section 21. Fear of the armed citizen and the threat of tough punishment for using a gun or other weapons and committing a violent crime are significant factors in both reducing and deterring crime. Fear of the armed citizen are significant factors in both reducing and deterring crime, as it's saying here. According to the results of a survey in prison felons conducted by Professors James D. Wright and Peter H. Rossi, through in-depth interviews with 1,874 imprisoned felons conducted between August 1982 and January 1983, the government conducted funded researchers divided into the deep-seated attitudes of criminals on the questions of weapons, choice, deterrence, attitudes towards gun control, criminal history, and firearms acquisition. Prisoners studied under, alright, skip that. Let's go on here. It says, you point out there's never a situation where there are no guns. Even if there are restrictions on guns, there is always a black market. If people have guns, it might as well be in the hands of people who are safe. The Wright-Rossi survey shows gun laws only affect law-abiding citizens. Criminals are always able to get guns. 88% agree of these criminals surveyed. A criminal who wants a handgun is going to get one. A smart criminal tries to find out if his potential victim is armed. Over 81% agreed. 56% of felons surveyed agree that a criminal is not going to mess around with a victim he knows is armed with a gun. 74% agree that one reason burglars avoid houses when people are at home is that they fear being shot. The average gun-wielding criminal studied expected to have no difficulty in obtaining a gun within a day after release from prison. The data shows that an outright ban on handguns, such as proposed by the National Coalition to Ban Handguns, would have nightmarish consequences. Outlawing handguns would simply make career criminals turn into what Wright describes as more lethal weapons. Now, it is only the criminals who can carry guns in churches because they do it illegally if we ban that, and the rest of us are just sitting down.